The Fever re-signed our good, close personal friend, Sophie Cunningham, to a 1-year contract. Let's go.
It was close. It was close.
Can I be nosy right off the jump?
By the way, it was close. She just told you she almost went to a different team, I think, is how I interpret that. But I think she understands the value of being on this team and trying to win a championship.
Given
that hesitation right there, that's not someone celebrating a new contract. That's someone who knows her value and just got lowballed. Sophie Cunningham signed a 1-year deal with the Phoenix Mercury for $665,000, and she's not hiding her disappointment. But here's what makes this fascinating. She had other offers on the table, and she almost walked away from Phoenix entirely.
There was a stretch of games last year, and let's just look. Right here, there was a stretch of games starting July 11th. This is basketballreference.com. Running down until August the 12th, where Sophie Cunningham was on a rager. She was destroying everything in her path, and she was shooting the lights out of the gym from three-point range.
Let's talk about why Sophie has every right to be frustrated. From July 11th through August 12th of last year, this woman went on an absolute tear. We're talking 67% from 3, 75%, 80% in consecutive games. Basketball Reference has the receipts. During that stretch, Sophie Cunningham was the most dangerous shooter in the entire league, and it wasn't particularly close. The Mercury don't make the playoffs without that run. They had injuries stacked on injuries, and Sophie carried them through 14 games she missed due to her own MCL tear. She played 30 games out of 44 total, and during her healthy stretch, she was legitimately elite, not good. Elite.
And structure and money and all of that over the last few weeks, like, was the contract better than you thought it would? Nope. Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I think,
Sorry.
no, it's fine, because it's tough because I came off an injury, and like, I haven't been in front of any teams. Like, I had a lot going on this offseason. And I was fully cleared. They had all the doctors. They had the numbers and everything. But if you don't get in front of these people, then it's like, hey, like, are you actually good? And so that, I'm not even going to lie to you, that was like a little kind of frustrating, because I'm someone who, like, I kind of shoot it straight, where if I wasn't feeling good or like I was hesitant, I think I would have said something and like been honest, because I'm just in the point in my career.
Here's the business reality that's eating at her. The timing of her MCL injury couldn't have been worse. She goes down right before free agency, right before she could showcase herself to other teams during the critical evaluation period. And unlike other players who got to work out in front of multiple organizations, Sophie was medically cleared but never got those opportunities. Teams had her medical records, they had the statistics, but they didn't get to see her move, didn't get to watch her shoot in person. That's a massive disadvantage in contract negotiations. And when you look at some of the money that got thrown around this offseason to players with far less impact, you start to understand her frustration. She's not saying the names, but we all saw the contracts. We all did the math.
Her three-point percentage, 80%, 67, 67, 62, 75%, 80%. I mean, I argued last year that Sophie should have been in the three-point contest instead of Lexi Hull, and there was a reason for that. I had a back and forth earlier, just an hour ago, with some moron who I was starting to wonder if he was a stalker, that was going on and on about Sophie.
But let's add another layer to this. Sophie Cunningham was the #1 trending female athlete on Google in 2025. Not 5th, not top 10, #1. That's name recognition that translates directly to ticket sales, merchandise, and media attention. There are maybe 5 players in the entire WNBA who have that kind of mainstream crossover appeal, and Sophie's one of them. Her endorsement portfolio reflects that reality. Companies that do market research for a living have decided she's worth significant investment. So when she sits down with the Mercury, and they offer her $665,000 for 1 year after she just carried them to the playoffs, yeah, that's going to sting. And here's the kicker. She openly admits it was close. She almost signed somewhere else. Phoenix didn't win this negotiation because they made an irresistible offer. They won because Sophie decided winning a championship mattered more than getting paid what she's worth right now.
And I just want to win.
Dope.
And so
Dope.
I'm not going to put my ego and everything in front of things. And I know it is a business, but I think I'm just wired a little differently. I don't know. I just want to win. And so it was a little weird, but you know what? I think this is a great wake up call to not get comfortable. I think it kind of lit a fire under my ass even more. At the end of the day, like, I'm coming back from a major, it was MCL. Like,
Totally.
You know what I mean? And so,
Totally.
I feel good.
Listen to how she frames this. She's not comfortable, and she's using that discomfort as motivation. That's a player who knows she took less than market value and is determined to prove everyone wrong. But there's a deadline on that mindset. She's also about to start calling WNBA games as a sideline reporter, which is going to pay well. And if Phoenix doesn't win a championship this season, Sophie's gone. That's not speculation. That's just reading the situation clearly. One-year deals are prove-it contracts. They go both ways. Sophie has to prove she's fully healthy and back to that elite shooting form. But Phoenix also has to prove they're serious about winning. Because if they're not, she's taking her talents and her Google search rankings somewhere else. And with the new expansion teams coming, with the salary cap going up, with the league's revenue increasing, Sophie's going to have options next year that she didn't have this time around.
And she's probably going to make a couple of $1 million over there. Now, let's come over to this, because also as part of this podcast, she talks about the rookies and she talks about Raven Johnson. Fever rookie Raven Johnson received high praise from Sophie Cunningham after the first day of training camp. And you've got media outlets running with this. Raven Johnson is a freaking dog. We had our first day of training camp, and I just love her. And of course, I posted shooting down the false narrative.
Now let's talk about the Raven Johnson situation, because this is where people are completely misreading the tea leaves. Sophie goes on her podcast and says Raven Johnson is a dog, says she loves her energy after the first day of training camp. And immediately, certain corners of the internet start celebrating, like this proves there's no tension, no history, no problems whatsoever. That's not how professional sports work. That's not how media relations work. And that's definitely not how the Indiana Fever's PR department works, after the high-five gate incident from 2 days ago, where Raven clearly stepped back and refused to acknowledge Caitlin Clark. Sophie Cunningham is a veteran who understands the game within the game. She's not going to publicly trash a rookie teammate on her podcast. That would be career suicide and locker room poison. What she's going to do is exactly what she did, say something diplomatically positive and move on.
You're already seeing people right now, going, see? Caitlin Clark and Raven Johnson, or Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, they love Raven Johnson. Do you believe either one of those entities or anybody else on this team was going to publicly drown Raven Johnson? No, I never believed that for a second. Did I think Raven Johnson was going to publicly drown Caitlin Clark or anybody else on this team? No. But we've seen what we've seen. And we've heard what we've heard. All right? There are no false narratives. We've witnessed. We've heard come out of her mouth. And she never directly ever dogged out Caitlin Clark, but she did F you to Caitlin Clark fans and called them a bunch of racists. So there's no false narratives. These players were never going to publicly drown anybody. That does not mean that everybody is cool with each other either.
Here's what people need to understand about public statements from professional athletes. They are performing for an audience, always. When Sophie praises Raven, when Caitlin says nice things about Stephanie White, when players talk about team chemistry in press conferences, that's the public-facing version of reality. It's not necessarily false, but it's curated, it's managed, it's what you're supposed to say when microphones are recording. The actual relationships, the actual dynamics, those play out in film sessions, and practice, and road trips, and group chats that we'll never see. And sometimes those relationships are great. Sometimes they're professional but distant, and sometimes they're actively hostile, but you'd never know it from the press conferences, because these are professionals who understand that airing dirty laundry publicly helps nobody. Think about what we've actually witnessed with our own eyes. Raven Johnson told Caitlin Clark's fanbase to go away, called them the dark side, made it crystal clear she wasn't interested in that support. That happened. That's not a false narrative, that's documented fact. She never directly criticized Caitlin, but she absolutely went after the fanbase, and then we watched her refuse a high five on camera. Now, does that mean Sophie Cunningham and Raven Johnson hate each other? No. Does it mean they're going to have problems in the locker room? Not necessarily. But does it mean that Sophie saying she's a dog on a podcast erases all that history and proves everything is perfect? Absolutely not. Those are two completely different things. Professional athletes have played entire seasons alongside teammates they couldn't stand. They've won championships with people they'd never socialize with off the court. The NBA is full of stories about star players who barely spoke to each other but dominated together because they were both professionals who wanted to win. That's the level we're talking about here. Sophie's comments about Raven don't prove there's no tension. They prove Sophie understands how to handle media obligations without creating unnecessary drama. Those are not the same thing, and anyone who's followed professional sports for more than 5 minutes should recognize the difference. And let's be honest about what happened after High Five Gate. The Fever's PR team absolutely had conversations with multiple players about presenting a united front publicly. That's crisis management 101. When an incident goes viral and creates negative headlines, you get ahead of it by having your veterans make positive statements. That's not conspiracy theory. That's standard operating procedure for every professional sports organization. So when you see Sophie praising Raven, when you see Caitlin being diplomatic about Stephanie White, when you see coordinated positive messaging, recognize it for what it is: professional damage control. It doesn't mean anyone's lying. It just means they're doing their jobs, which includes not making the PR team's life harder by feeding controversy. The truth is, we don't know what the actual relationships are like behind closed doors. We know what they show us, and what they show us is always going to be the most professional, most team-friendly version of reality. That's not cynicism, that's just understanding how media relations work in professional sports. What we do know is this: Sophie Cunningham is underpaid based on her production and her marketability. She knows it, Phoenix knows it, and the one-year deal proves both sides are keeping their options open. If they win a championship, maybe she runs it back. If they don't, she's testing free agency with a full season of post-injury production to show teams, and she's going to get paid significantly more than $665,000. As for the Ravens situation, time will tell. Chemistry is built over a full season, not in one training camp practice. We'll see how these relationships develop when the games matter, when the pressure's on, when someone's having a bad shooting night or missing defensive rotations. That's when you find out who actually meshes and who's just being professional for the cameras. But don't mistake public pleasantries for proof that there's no underlying tension. And definitely don't think that one podcast comment from Sophie Cunningham erases months of documented history. These are professionals doing professional things. The real story is always more complicated than the sound bites.